Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is your go-to spot for delicious eats and good vibes. Offering mouth-watering pizzas with all your favorite toppings, pasta dishes that'll make your taste buds dance, killer burgers, and amazing steaks too. Whether you're grabbing a quick bite with friends or enjoying a laid-back dinner with family, Steve Areno's has got you covered. So head over to Chattanooga's North Shore where you can kick back, relax, and let Steve Areno's take care of the cooking. Steve Areno's Italian Eatery is a proud supporter of CADAS.
The Flying Locksmith is your trusted partner in all things security, offering commercial security systems, security cameras, audio and video intercom systems, supply, installation, and commercial-grade door hardware. In need of hands-free hardware to reduce the spread of germs? Worry no more, because the Flying Locksmiths are here to save the day. With fast response times and top-notch service, they'll be sure to keep you safe, secure, and protected in no time. Unlocking peace of mind, one lock at a time. Flying Locksmiths is a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at CADAS. Welcome to Scarred But Smarter podcast, hosted by Jeff Stiles, presented by CADAS, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, sharing relatable stories of addiction recovery along with our hearts, our voices, and an abundant amount of love with all of those affected by the disease of addiction. We thank you for allowing us to be a part of your journey. And now, here is your host, Jeff Stiles.
Hey folks, welcome back once again to a new podcast, relatively new, still sort of, wet behind the ears podcast here. My name is Jeff Stiles with a Y, and this is called Scarred But Smarter. It is sponsored and brought to you by CADAS, the Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, and Mary Catherine Gentry, who is a employee in good standing at CADAS, is with me as always, and good to see you, ma'am.
So good to see you, Jeff. Thank you.
Good morning. And we have our guest today, Melanie Berg, who is the Director of Youth Services at the Scholze Center. And good morning to you, Melanie.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
No, see, you're a natural. Just rolled right into that.
I'm a pro already.
Absolutely. The Scholze Center is, please, just fill in the blank for me in your own words.
Scholze Center is an inpatient treatment center for adolescents in the state of Tennessee. So we take kids 13 to 18. So it's residential. They live with us for 60 days while they do treatment. They do individual therapy, family therapy, group therapy. They go to school while they're with us and get all the help they need. And then we send them back home and connect them with resources for wherever they live.
13 to 18.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any 13 to 18-year-olds in America today that don't need some help with mental health?
It feels that way.
Let me be honest and frank.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be making light, but I just it'd be kind of hard sometimes for some of us to figure out what is out of the norm and what is the norm these days.
Yeah, we work really closely with Department of Children's Services and juvenile probation officers throughout the state. So it's not a requirement, but probably about 70% of the kids have involvement with either DCS or probation. So these are kids who are on someone's radar.
They've crossed a line at some point. They've gotten above the Mendoza line somewhere. Is this directly related to substance abuse and use, alcohol and drugs, considering the connection with CADAS? Or I was going to say, can they just come in on general purposes?
They have to have a primary substance use diagnosis, so they need to have that in their history. It's very common that there are some secondary mental health concerns going on as well. Okay.
Right off the bat, let me ask you a fairly serious question. I have learned in my own journey and on my own path with dealing with addiction and substance abuse and use and the ins and outs and ups and downs of it, I finally came to the conclusion, and I went into rehab for the first time in 2006, and it hit me one day, and this is something you hear all the time, but you have to finally figure it out yourself. Alcohol was not my problem. Alcohol was a symptom of a problem that was much deeper in my life. And when the alcohol went away, it didn't make the problem go away. Mm-hmm. It just made me a little bit more adept at facing up to it. When you're dealing with somebody that young, I'm going to go ahead and get out on a thin limb and say it probably works very much the same way for them. It's probably an escape or a crutch or a mistake, just got into a habit. It really truly became a habit. it probably wasn't the issue to begin with.
No. I think a lot of it is I'm young and I'm invincible, and this is fun.
Some of us actually hang on to that till we're 57.
Sure, yeah. I think a lot of it's just experimenting. I'm young and this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And
Society
a lot of
tells
it,
you so.
and a lot of it is unhealthy coping mechanisms. We deal with a lot of kids with a lot of childhood trauma, and they've got feelings that they don't want to feel, and this is their escape. So, they think, kind of air quotes, this is helping me. I'm not feeling these feelings that I don't want to feel anymore. I'm numb to it now. And then they start to realize that the substances are, it's symptomatic. It's not actually helping you cope with what you're trying to mask.
For what we would sometimes in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, we would refer to as earth people, the people who don't need the services of AA or other 12-step programs, they probably would have a hard time trying to wrap their heads around why would somebody who's 13 years old have problems so deep and so dire that they would need to turn to drugs.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the family members say that too. Like, what's so bad about your life? I don't understand. And so I think there's a lot of internal stuff going on that the kids don't know how to process or talk about. And so a substance it feels like an easy out for them.
Do you see a pattern where we've kind of dove into the deep end right off the bat? We're going to come back and get a little bit more history on the Scholze Center and you. So be prepared for that. You didn't bring notes, I notice.
Okay, no pressure. History lesson.
Planning is for dullards. That's my motto. Do you see a composite adolescent that comes in? If you could take everybody and boil them down and say, here is our customer, our patient, our patron, whatever. Could you actually paint that picture for me?
Yeah, it would be someone who started using substances probably around age 11 or 12. They probably have family members who also use. It's not uncommon that their first time using was with a parent. It's also,
or using their parents' stash.
Yeah. It's not uncommon for them to use with family members or just have a family history of addiction. A lot of our kids are being raised by grandparents because maybe parents are incarcerated or they're in and out of rehab themselves. Childhood trauma, I would say, is probably the biggest connector. If you look at the adverse child experiences, the ACEs, they've all got several, and that right there is already putting you at risk. So I would say it's trauma and early initiation of use.
We're not done with that yet, but I'm going to actually ask one more deep probing question of you before we get into actually a little bit of just some commercial time coming up, because there's some big events coming that you guys are at the center of, and I want to get a plug in for that right off the bat. We know that, some people will start the podcast and won't ever finish it. I don't know what's wrong with them. I'd like to have a good long talking to with these guys. But yourself, have you been through the program? Have you had these issues? Are you experienced, as Jimi Hendrix would say?
Yeah, I am an earth person, as you would have called it.
Okay.
So no, I am not in recovery. I love people in recovery. I think one of the unique things about the adolescent department is we do have staff members who are in recovery, but at the root, I think everyone who works there, they want to work with kids and they love working with kids. And so my background is psychology and counseling, and pretty much since I was a teenager myself, I knew that I wanted to be another adult who cared, who would listen to kids.
You did have that experience.
Yeah.
The awkwardness and the general,
absolutely.
Oh my God, what the hell is happening in this world that I'm living in?
Yeah.
I'm just flotsam and jetsam in this world. I'm nobody. I'm everybody. I'm everything. I'm nothing. Oh.
Yeah, and I'm by no means perfect, but I fortunately had a good support system and found healthier ways to cope.
I'll stay for the record here. If there was a time machine, I would not go back.
No.
No. Those are tough years. You remember them fondly for the most part, but they're very tough years. Now, the Scholze Center itself, how long has it been around? It's been around for as long as I've been in Chattanooga. I moved here in 84.
It's been around longer than I've been around. So, sometime in the 80s is when it opened as a treatment center.
It was over, and I guess, is it still over on Pineville Road?
Yes, we are.
We were neighbors for a long time. You give you a confession real quick?
What'd you do?
Before I realized that I had a serious problem, I used to have the same fun with the stereotypes that everybody did. As a matter of fact, I was well known for, when Mayor Ron Littlefield was in office, for starting a website when the internet was brand new called beerforthehomeless.com. And not only did I make national news, I made global news for all the wrong reasons, I might add. But I actually worked at the radio station that's next door to you guys over there, the talk radio station. And I would very often, and I'm saying this is a confession, I would often say we're out here on Moccasin Bend, and between the insane asylum, the sewage treatment plant, and the home for disturbed teenagers. And, in my mind, that was a funny little say, yeah, we're out here amongst our peeps, we're in our tribe, but I was really being extremely crass and rough around the edges and unfair to these institutions that were doing such good work. And it was, again, with me feeling, even at the age of 35 and 42, that I was still 19 years old at heart and I could say and do anything. I now understand just how hurtful some of those comments have been. But that is, I think, kind of the perception that people had, that this is the place where troubled youth went. And I guess it's not far from the truth.
No. And I think there's still the kids that are labeled as the bad kids, essentially. And, that's part of the stigma that we're trying to break down, because they feel like they're programmed, they're hardwired to keep doing this because they're bad kids.
And the stigma is something I definitely want to come back to. Now, Mary Catherine, I want you to, if you would, take just a couple of minutes here and tell everybody about these upcoming events that you guys have. And when we first met and started talking about this podcast, you had this on your radar screen, and it has come to full fruition. So a couple of big summer sports camps coming up that the Scholze Center will be central to and benefiting from, I hope.
That's right. The Brittany Jackson Tucker basketball camp is Monday, June 17th. Baylor School. Boys and girls are welcome. Grades 1st through 8th. 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Lunch provided by Mellow Mushroom. You can go to CADAS.org to register, and be sure to use the special code SPECIAL. It's the word SPECIAL. Just spell it out when you go to CADAS.org to register. We'll have lots of free prizes. Everyone in attendance will get a basketball signed by Brittany, a camp t-shirt, a water bottle, and lots of prizes. Later in the summer, we're hoping to put together a football camp, so stay tuned. Are you looking to bring your commercial project to life? Look no further, because the expert team of Robert Roberts General Contractors specializes in turning your vision into a reality. From concept to completion, Robert Roberts General Contractors handles every detail of your commercial project with precision and care, ensuring that your project is delivered on time and within budget. Robert Roberts General Contractor is a proud supporter of substance abuse recovery at CADAS. Let's dream big and take steps towards creating a community where everyone feels valued, supported, and empowered to reach their full potential. Support those on the path to recovery by donating to CADAS today.
Here with Mary Catherine Gentry from CADAS. Myself, my name is Jeff Stiles. Thank you very much for tuning in to Scarred But Smarter, the podcast that CADAS supports and sponsors here. And Melanie Berg, a self-described huge sports enthusiast who is considered to be quite the connoisseur of team sports, especially football.
Yeah, go sports. Taylor Swift's boyfriend, I believe, plays that sport.
It reminds me of the Garfunkel and Oates song. If you've never seen it before, it's two ladies, they're singer-songwriters, and they are hilarious. And one, they just do, go sports. And well, you'll have to see it to understand it. All right. No, actually, Melanie said, don't ask me any questions about football camps or basketball camps.
I'm excited about the fundraiser, though.
I was going to say, but it is a fundraiser for you guys. Now, what is your background? I said we were going to come back to you, and I want to, because you're the guest, and I want to dig down into your story a little bit. So you did not have an addiction problem yourself. You didn't go through any sort of recovery, rehab, or things like that. But this is what you chose to do. This is the field that you said, I want to go deal with idiots like Jeff Stiles and young people who might still have a chance to make something of themselves, like at the Scholze Center. What got you here?
So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and the high school I went to was at the time the third biggest high school in America. So I think I noticed pretty early that I had a lot of friends struggling with things, and it kind of felt like there were no adults that cared, or we didn't know how to find the adults who cared. It was pretty common that I had friends coming to me with mental health issues, substance use issues, and we were all just kind of looking for help and trying to figure things out. So pretty much since I was a teenager, I knew I wanted to work with teenagers and be an advocate for young people and kind of help lead them through a really rough transitional period. So moved down to the South, got my bachelor's in psychology. I worked at Park Ridge Valley Hospital on the acute adolescent unit. So I was working on a psych ward essentially with adolescents, and most of them have just attempted suicide. That's probably the biggest reason that brings people in. And I loved that work. I feel like I thrive in that setting. You're never bored.
She's brightening up, literally. She's glowing. I can tell this is somebody who's truly passionate.
You see so many struggles and so much darkness, but I think you see so much hope and transition in just a few days that someone goes from, I can't do this, to maybe I can. And it was really cool for me to be a part of that process and see them blossom. And I noticed, mental health and addiction, they know no race, gender, socioeconomic. And so
a respecter of no person.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I started noticing you'd have kids who had overdosed that were coming in, and it didn't matter if they went to, Baylor or Macaulay or an underprivileged public school. There was often some underlying substance use stuff going on.
I want to dig down a little bit on the stigma that you mentioned earlier, and the suicide rate and things of that nature, the depression a little bit. But I also want to ask you this, again, personally. So from Brooklyn, that's in New York, y'all, and this huge school, down to the rural South, Chattanooga, mid-sized city, but really, I'll tell you, it's a big town as opposed to a small city, and still has many of those attributes that small town America enjoys and has earned. And can you tell a difference in the culture when you said you looked around and you didn't see adults up there trying to help? Is there a major difference between the Big Apple and the scenic city and the culture and the family unit? Can you tell a discernible shade of difference?
Yeah, I think it's easy to blend in the city because there's so many people and there's so much going on all the time. So I think it felt like problems kind of flew under the radar, and it was harder to get help. So I do think it's a little easier for a problem to be noticed here. That could also just be a cultural shift, maybe, that we've talked more about mental health and addiction with young people. I think there are more adults kind of in social services kind of tuned in and looking for those things.
I always felt like the South sort of, maybe rural America in general, but certainly small southern towns tend to accept eccentricity to a degree. So therefore, somebody who just is a little bit different, maybe nobody would approach them because, hey, it's none of my business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that down here. None of my business. You do what you want to do.
Yeah, I do think, unfortunately, I think I notice more substance use here, and it's probably, partially because of the field I'm in that I notice it more, but there's just so much to do growing up in the city. And so working at CADAS, I hear stories of kids from more rural counties that they're using because what else is there to do? So that's very different than what I grew up with.
Earlier today, I was doing a podcast with my partner, Clint Powell, here at Whitfield Media. Sean's in here working with us this morning. We appreciate him very much. And we talked about the fact that we have seen a major shift in this country, probably the world, in the issues that you've already touched on with youth. In my entire childhood and young adulthood, I had one friend, who committed suicide. I can't remember anybody else even attempting it. It was unthinkable. Literally, it was not in our realm of imagination. And it was a girl that made this guy shoot himself. And we're going, well, what a dummy. Why did he do that? There'd be other girls later on down the road. That was the way we wrote it off. Nowadays, it seems to be epidemic. And depression is being monitored and measured at greater rates than we've ever seen before. I mentioned to Clint in the conversation we had that I watched a news special over the course of the weekend, and they had kind of rolled back the hands of time and said, we really begin to see the problem emerge the way we recognize it today in the early 90s, with helicopter parents bringing their children off of the playground and out of the yards because they were afraid of abductions. But it kicked into high gear in about 2010 when social media started being introduced, and when screen time took over from the TV, the electronic babysitter, to the handheld screen, and suddenly playtime just didn't exist anymore. I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I definitely think we've seen a huge increase in those issues because of social media. And, I grew up in that generation, but I was a teenager by the time there was any amount of social media. So these kids have had their whole life documented. They've had phones since they were maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. So you're really hard on yourself. And I think you're seeing people say mean things about you on the internet. I think you internalize a lot of stuff. and it becomes really hard to figure out who you really are and what messages you should believe and you shouldn't believe.
If you have a 14-year-old girl who has come up in a narcissistic manner, and I'm not trying to be negative, say that's her fault. I'm saying, but literally, this world has been telling her, this is the way you need to look, this is the way you need to act, this is what you need to do and how to respond to all the rest of these people to garner these clicks and to garner these likes and these thumbs up and things of this nature. And they're the center of universal attention as far as they can tell. How can you describe a world to them that is unlike that, and that they're wrong, that there's more out there other than just this damn thing in my hand, squawking at them, telling them all the negatives? How do you break through?
Well, they don't have their cell phone while they're in treatment. So
there's one, you know what? And the expert on that show I was just talking about and the other guests on them all agreed nobody should be getting a smartphone until they were probably 16 years old. Give them a flip phone if you're worried about them communicating and tell them to deal with it.
Yeah, you need, that's parenting advice, I guess. But yeah, you need limits on your phones. These kids should not have them in their pockets all the time. But I think it takes having conversations about why you believe what you believe, because it's really easy to say, this is how I should dress, or this is normal. But talking about those messages and why you believe what you believe, I think media literacy is really important. It's just a lot of noise, and it's very hard to distinguish who you really are and figure that out. And I think, early recovery, that you're figuring out who you are. And so
sure you are.
They need to be able to cut out the noise, cut out the distractions. They don't have phones. They have no access really to the outside world other than phone calls with their parents. So we want them to be a little bit selfish, and look at themselves, but you also need to have empathy. You need to understand the ways in which your actions have hurt other people and see the world from someone else's perspective.
Out of just curiosity yourself, I see you were a teenager by the time social media came in. I'm already, a grandfather by the time social media comes in. So I have done none, and I'm not joking. Maybe I'm the wrong person to be doing this interview because I've done none. I don't have a Facebook page. Is LinkedIn social media? I don't do that either. So it doesn't make any difference. I'm saying, so I really don't understand it. Everything that I see, I have to say is negative. What I see is people that go on to their phone, their computer every day, and it's like walking into the UTC arena. There's 11,000 people in there, and they're all saying, you suck. And you go in there multiple times a day to try to convince them that you don't suck, and it just makes it worse. That's the only way I can describe it. That's what I see when I see people using social media.
Yeah.
So I can't even begin to relate. I'm assuming you can relate a little bit better, and they can relate to you because you're younger. You have a little bit more of a tie to their generation. But I'm also thinking you probably see people who come in there and are having in-depth conversations face-to-face, maybe for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, it's very hard to make eye contact. It's very hard to... It's so much easier to text something vulnerable. It's so much harder to say it out loud. And that's really something that, my counselors have to help them learn how to do. I don't think it's all negative. I think especially when you look at mental health and addiction resources, it's easier to find that stuff online. I think there's so many bad things you can find too, but, there's AA apps and things like that to help you find meetings. There's crisis text lines that, if you're feeling suicidal or feeling like I want to use or hurt myself, it's very easy to text someone who's a crisis-trained counselor on the other side.
What is the process for somebody out there who has a young person in their life, maybe somebody who's actually listening somehow, or they know somebody, they have suspicions? What is the process for getting a young person into the Scholze Center, into treatment?
So they call us. They can send an email through the form on the website, or they can call us. And we have a referral form that kind of filters out, is this an appropriate kid for us? Do they have a history of any past substance use treatment? Do they have any mental health or medical diagnoses, legal stuff, demographics, insurance, kind of all the things you need to know. And we can kind of determine, yes, this child's appropriate to be in our program. And then they go on our wait list, and we bring them in as soon as we have a bed open. I'm
going to ask something that's kind of uncomfortable here, and you just tell me whatever the answer is as you understand it. Watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest this weekend, one of my favorite movies ever, and of course my own experience in rehab units. And with law enforcement, I've had a few run-ins myself. There's a big difference between wanting to be somewhere and being told you have to be somewhere. And there's a very gray area when you deal with facilities such as yours, institutions such as yours. Sometimes they go in willingly, but then discover once they're there that they cannot leave of their own free will. What is the Scholze Center's policy on things? If a family member says, you know what, we've made a mistake after 4 or 5 days, can they get the kid back out, or are you basically turning them over to the state?
So some of them are court ordered to be with us.
They don't have a choice.
They don't have a choice.
This or jail.
Well, yes.
This or jail.
That doesn't mean that they're not going to get themselves kicked out of the program or parents aren't going to come pick them up.
Gotcha.
But then they understand that you're probably going to custody or you're going back to a detention center. We have kids sometimes who are furloughed from jail, so they know they're going back. We get calls from emergency rooms where a child has overdosed. We get calls from concerned parents. We do get calls from the kids themselves saying, hey, I really need to be here. But it's not uncommon that you maybe aren't willing to admit you have a problem. That's the beginning of addiction, right? And
there's some buyer's remorse too.
Oh, absolutely.
Some people think, I think this is right for me on Monday. By Thursday, I'm going, oh my God, let me out.
The first week is the hardest. I always say that's going to be a roller coaster week. If you can make it past the first week, it's going to be smooth sailing. So our job is to kind of move the needle a little bit from I don't have a problem to maybe I do need to be here. And even if you're saying, I didn't choose this, I have to do this, well, what do you want to work on?
I asked that question because I just wanted some clarity, because I think sometimes some of these facilities, like I've mentioned in the past, they don't really tell you when you get in it. Now, once they're here, they're ours. And that is an issue for people when they say, you know what, we think we've changed our mind. So venture into the Scholze Center with confidence. And I can guarantee you it's better than jail. You don't have to debate that.
Yeah. And the kids are pretty good at telling themselves that too. The kids see someone on day one and they're having a hard time and they know what that was like because they've been there, 3 weeks now. So the kids are really good at telling the new kid, it's not that bad. This is better than jail. Like you can do this, and kind of cheering each other on. The kids are good at self-correcting. If they're leading a 12-step group, they're like, hey, this is serious. You need to take this seriously.
I want to come back in just a second and actually talk about some of the substances that are out there, that things have changed dramatically since the 70s when I was coming up. We thought we'd seen everything. We'd seen very little compared to what the kids see today. Mary Catherine Gentry, if you would, real quick, lean up again and just give everybody a quick plug for CADAS itself, for those who want to get in touch with the good folks out there at the Council on Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services.
If you or someone you know and love is struggling with addiction and you think that they may need help, or if you yourself would like to reach out to CADAS for an assessment, you may call 423-384-0735 or go to cadas.org to learn all about the programs that are available at CADAS.
Number one more time.
423-756-7644. If you're dreaming of spring gardening weather, visit the Barn Nursery for the best selection of plants to bring on the spring blooms. The Barn Nursery is the South's premier garden center and a proud supporter of alcohol and drug abuse recovery at CADAS. Discover the elegance and charm of generations past at Brody Jewelers. With a legacy of craftsmanship and quality, Brody Jewelers offers a curated collection of exquisite pieces that tell stories of love and legacy. From vintage heirlooms to modern masterpieces, each piece carries a rich history waiting to be cherished by you. Visit Brody Jewelers today and experience the magic of this family-owned, historical, fine jewelry store, where every piece is a work of art and every customer is family. Brody Jewelers is a proud supporter of CADAS.
In the studio here with Melanie Berg, the Director of Youth Services at the Scholze Center, and Mary Catherine Gentry from CADAS. And we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We appreciate all of our sponsors, all the people that make this podcast Scarred But Smarter possible. And I asked Melanie, we talked a little bit during that brief break there, and I said, I want to come back and talk about the actual substances themselves. I'm 17 years old. Let's just go with 17. You had alcohol, mostly beer. You had plenty of marijuana. We thought that we'd seen the pinnacle of the cannabis, underground back in those days, and that was dirt weed compared to what the average stuff is on the street today. Occasionally a hallucinogenic, maybe some cocaine. Now we've got ketamine. Now we've got DMT. Now we've got fentanyl and the painkillers. They didn't exist back then. If they did, we weren't aware of them. It's a cornucopia, a pharmacopoeia of stuff out there that's available, that's legal in some instances, completely illegal in others, but it can all be had, and it's all in our community.
Yeah, I think marijuana and alcohol are still the two things that you see that are kind of the gateway, so to speak. That's the thing that pretty much everyone has tried. But yeah, the marijuana is different now. It's so much stronger and more potent. And with that, you see more psychoactive ingredients and more psychotic side effects. So that's really scary. And fentanyl would be the other big one that we're seeing. And I was telling Mary Catherine this, like, yeah, it's in dab pens. So there are kids that think they're just smoking weed and it's laced with fentanyl.
Because there's just so much of it.
It's everywhere.
We had the story here recently where somebody thought they were buying ketamine. The guy had a bunch of fentanyl. He goes, it'll get him messed up. He sells it to them, and somebody overdoses and dies.
Mm-hmm.
You think, well, why is he doing? Because he's got a bunch of product on his hands. He wants to get rid of it. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's laced in everything from what I can tell, and Trank is as well. Whatever that the chemical name is for it. Street name is Trank, which is just a tranquilizing. And again, people get a buzz, so they think they're getting what they pay for, but they could be actually dosing themselves with something far more insidious.
Yeah. I think we're definitely seeing a lot of meth and fentanyl use and, press pills, opioids, all that. And all those things require a medical detox. And it's really scary. Like, kids can overdose and, one time could be the end of it.
And that's again, why would somebody put themselves at risk? You already said it. They're young. They're invulnerable. They're going to live forever.
Yeah.
And of course, unfortunately, some of them don't. What do you think is the most dangerous drug right now? Is it fentanyl? I think that pretty much is hands down across the board agreed upon.
Yeah.
And maybe one thing we're actually in agreement upon in the world of recovery is that it is something relatively new, the way it's being abused and just produced so cheaply. Is it worse here than it is in the big cities, do you think? Or and here as opposed, we used to call crystal, we had the hillbilly heroin, which was essentially just OxyContin, and hydrocodones and all the things. Hillbilly heroin was just pain pills that could be ground up or, just snorted, whatever. But that seemed to be kind of kept in the country, in the rural areas. That's not the case anymore. Do you think it's worse here or different here than it is on the West Coast or in the Midwest?
It feels like it's worse here. That could be, an issue of where drugs are coming through. I think Chattanooga area, there's a lot of drugs being trafficked through this area. So, I feel like I knew what fentanyl was 5 years ago, but it wasn't on my unit, and it's very prevalent now. And
you actually just said something. I think people, they don't think about this, and they hear that we are a major drug trafficking corridor. Well, we are, because we have two major interstates that roll through our town. One goes north to south, the other one goes east to west. What do you think is going to happen there? Yeah. It comes out of it in Miami, it comes up to Atlanta, it gets dispersed, it comes to Chattanooga, and it goes to Paducah from there, and out into Otter Tail, Wisconsin or someplace. We don't know. But yeah, it's always going to. You have major interstates, you have riverways, throughways, byways, other ways. Stuff's going to be coming through. Mm-hmm. Are you guys, do you have people actually that serve for the Scholze Center or for you folks that are actually out there on the lookout for people who might actually be in the business? Do you actually have any sort of law enforcement capacity at all working with you?
Directly connected, no. I think we do work really closely with Hamilton County Juvenile Court and juvenile courts across the state. So we definitely report whatever we hear. It's not uncommon that I have to make reports to Child Protective Services based on hearing a kid say that they're using with whoever it is.
Or in the midst of a conversation, they drop something that they didn't want to say, probably shouldn't have said.
Yeah.
But now you can't ignore it.
Right. But I don't always have all the details that you need for a report.
I asked that question because, it's made for strange bedfellows. My wife was in the hospitality, industry for a long time. And hotel maids and staffers were the front line for people looking for human trafficking. And you've got teachers who are out there being the front line for people looking for domestic abuse and child abuse. And so it's become a very complicated world.
Yeah, I think everyone that works at the Scholze Center, we all want to be advocates for those kids. We all want to see them do well. And so any concern of any kind, we're doing what we need to do and reporting it and taking it seriously.
Do you have any kind of either official and codified or unofficial kind of rule of thumb? This kid is on the lower end of the scale. He's smoking pot. He got in some trouble. And then the kid over here who is literally looking for smack, and he's already shooting up. Is there a sliding scale as to how high and red the flags are when people come in that are flying?
Yeah, so when we look at their assessment and their referral information, we are trying to figure out how severe is the issue and is there a lower form of treatment you could try first? Could you do intensive outpatient therapy? Have there been other attempts made? So we do try and kind of weed that out, but I will say pretty much if someone's calling us, they need residential treatment. So, yeah, we're going to take them in. I think, unfortunately, we have to look at...
People don't approach your business lightly.
No.
They've already gone through something to actually make the call, to pick up that 10,000-pound telephone and call you guys.
Yeah, we get a lot of concern calls from parents that are, my child is not going to make it if something doesn't change quickly.
You mentioned something earlier that I can't help but go back to, and we've heard this all my life, that marijuana was the gateway drug. Mm-hmm. And the older I got and the more I look back, I think really beer is a gateway drug. Tobacco is a gateway drug. How many people? I never smoked. And I may be the only person I know that became an addict that did not use nicotine. It seems to me like you mentioned that rebellious phase of youth. I need to do this. I need to try this. I need to, flip a bird to the parents and the older generation out there and show them I'm cool. I'm this. I'm that. I'm a rebel. I'm a renegade. I'm a gangster. That's the first place they stop, and then it goes from there. I don't think necessarily that drug users, I certainly don't think they're bad people. I don't think they're wanting to get into become a kingpin. I think a lot of it is just expressing themselves. There's no doubt about it. And there's got to be a point where you guys look at people and say, you know what, this kid's not far off from a healthy experimentation level. How do you deal with a parent when it's like that? You say, you know what, I think your kid's going to be okay.
Yeah, I think there's some fear mongering sometimes with parents.
Yes.
I think we do family therapy with all of them. And so a lot of it is communication skills, learning how to talk to your parents and how the parents need to talk to the kid. And then a lot of it's that fear of, mom's going to freak out if I tell her this, and like having that conversation of, mom, how can you stay calm when your child is telling you something? What do you need to hear from your kid in those moments? And like teaching them how to have those difficult conversations. And
on the darker side of that spectrum too, I'm sure there are times where you and other, your coworkers have seen somebody who is screaming for help and who is definitely on the wrong road and moving down it at a very, very fast pace, and the family doesn't want to believe it. And how do you deal with that when you have a parent in denial or whoever the caretaker is in denial, and you're like going, if we release him right now to you, you're going to be very sad in a couple of months. Yeah, we call it out. We're not going to be shy about that. And it's making sure we've got as many supportive plans in place for that child as possible. If it's a situation where we need to extend someone in treatment and keep them longer because home is not a safe place, we will do that. And if we have to send them home and, home might not be a safe place, we're going to make sure that they have intensive in-home family therapy. We're going to make sure the probation officer or the DCS worker knows, because we're trying to keep as many eyes on that kid as possible. It's setting up safety plans for, maybe mom drinks and I can't stop mom from drinking, but I can help you come up with a safety plan of what are you going to do if mom is drunk and you don't want to be around it. What can you do to protect yourself? Mary Catherine and I have discussed this before, and AA is a spiritual program. That doesn't mean it's a religious program. It doesn't mean it's a Christian program. It's as long as you have faith in a higher power, something higher than yourself, and it may very well be just the group consciousness that you need to answer to and respect. That's pretty much all it requires. People of all faith and very little. Does the Scholze Center, does it have a faith aspect to it? No, it is spiritual. It is 12-step based. The kids run their own 12-step group every day. They do their own 12-step meeting. And then at least once a week, we have someone come in and run meetings with them. And then we also take them out into the community to go to meetings on weekends. How long is the typical stay? 60 days. 60 days. Mm-hmm. Yeah, 60 days for everyone. We will make it longer if we need to, if there are extenuating circumstances. Sometimes we have a kid who's really close to 18 and we'll hold them to get them set up somewhere else. Both yourselves and the industry as a whole, I'll call it that, recidivism rate. Mm-hmm. What kind of rate are you looking at? I've heard terrible tales about crystal meth. You might have a 6% survival rate if you ever really go down that road. 16%, I don't know, something like that. It's bad. Recidivism rate, I mean, those folks who are and backsliding and relapse is part of recovery, we know that, but what would it be? It's really hard to track that. I imagine it's really hard to track that. What I will say is we do a really good job of keeping in touch with all the kids. Ooh, do you? Yeah, that's unusual. We've got a way to text them in a HIPAA compliant way. So, we give them our business cards when we leave, and these kids will text their counselor and keep in touch. Our teacher will follow up with their schools and follow up on their educational goals. And so
they check in with us pretty regularly. They'll send us, their
That's
senior
wonderful.
photos or like their high school graduation. And they'll also text us and call us and say, hey, I need help. I need to come back.
That
and
makes me feel good. Yeah, because most, rehab units that are out there, they're there to make money like everybody else. And the only time they're going to get in touch with you is when we owe them money, for the most part. Now, some may be different, but that's very enheartening.
Yeah, and it's, it's sad when they call us and say, I need help and I need to come back, but I'm really thankful that they do. They know that we care about them. They know that we're a safe place to come back to if they need the help. So it's not uncommon that we will readmit someone who needs the help.
Do you think that it is getting worse? How old are you? Let me just ask.
33.
Do you think it's getting worse or getting better as far as the kids' society and them thinking, you know what, this is what my heroes do?
Yeah.
We had heroes too. Rock stars are my heroes. They were a bunch of users and abusers. But you know what? If they overdosed, we thought, what a loser. What a loser. I don't know that after the era of gangster rap and social media and all these huge seismic changes that society's gone through, if it's gotten better or worse, if it's kind of just the same. Maybe I'm just an old curmudgeonly guy and looks back at it and goes, these kids today, they don't understand, they don't get it, it's so simple, blah, 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 blah. Do you think it's getting better or getting worse as far as the way society imprints on the children and the way the children, I'm going to call them that, react to society?
I think some things are getting worse. I think there's more access to things and they're scarier, harder drugs. Social media definitely has plenty of negatives to it, but I think societally we're talking more about these things. We're having conversations about them. I don't think there would be a podcast like this 15 years ago. And I think there are celebrities that are more open about their struggles, mental health and addiction. I think, even paparazzi narrative, I think compared to when I was a teenager is so different. When you look at celebrities who've kind of like had public spirals and breakdowns, I think we've got a lot more empathy for how we talk about that stuff now, and people are more vulnerable about their struggles. And maybe that is a positive of social media. You get to know people's stories more.
Again, when people overdosed or died back in the day, you had the Jimi Hendrixes, the Jim Morrisons, the Janis Joplins, and they were immortalized. But I don't remember anybody ever saying, I want to do that too. I saw when my oldest daughter was young and Kurt Cobain died, I saw something I never thought I'd see. And I was angry. I liked Nirvana. And I was angry that he would take himself, such a young, talented guy, and just take this gift and just squander it. And her friends, and it was very surprising, and it got my attention, and it bothered me, and we got through it, but they saw it as an option. It actually occurred to them, if life gets so tough, there's a way out. Now, that was a sea change to me. And now look at, everybody from Robin Williams to Taylor Hawkins from the Foo Fighters. What the hell? I just don't get it. But for some reason, it seems like the young people of today are more empathetic with that sickness.
Yeah, I think there is more empathy and more understanding of if you're at that point, things must be really, really bad and you were really struggling.
That would be scary for me. For you to be able to go in there every day and deal with that look on your face and that light in your eyes, I got nothing but admiration for you. I'd be just the opposite. I think I would just find the dark side of it and not dwell on it. I know me. I don't think I'd be good around suicidal kids.
And there are definitely hard days, but I think I always go back to the reason I kind of got into this work of I want to be a positive person for these kids. And you see so much change and growth in them. And, there's hard days where kids are struggling, but there's also really sweet childlike moments. We had a kid last week who found a turtle outside, this teeny tiny little turtle. Aww. And she was like, can we keep it? Can we have a class pet? And, my staff went out and bought an aquarium. And they were all like, can I hold the turtle? And they all want to show us. And it's cute. You see that they're kids, and these are kids that for the most part haven't gotten to be kids. So
there's a lot to be said in that statement right there.
Anything we can do to have fun with them is so important. Like we've got laser tag sets that we bust out if there's bad weather. We did a bunch of stuff for Easter last week and did field games. And these are kids that didn't get to be kids. And so the therapy is important. The recovery is important. The education's important. They also just need to have fun sometimes.
I think I'll make the last suggestion here. And Mary Catherine, are you still sure that I'm the guy to be hosting this thing after I've said I'm Mr. Bad Example?
More than ever.
And don't need to be around these kids because I'm afraid of the way I'd react. I'd say that the voluminous, number of outdoor sports we have around here would be a real precious resource. from rock climbing to hang gliding to kayaking to backpacking, hiking, biking, and all the rest of it, everything out there. We're a national and geographic center in this hemisphere for those types of activities. I mean, hunting and fishing, things of that nature. I know you probably couldn't go on hunting trips, but it seems to me like that would be a natural sort of rung on the ladder maybe for the kids who are at the tail end of their experience, and give them something, really solid that they could hang on to, and get them some adrenaline rushes.
Yeah.
Healthy ones.
Yeah. Anything we can do to take them out on a field trip and let them do something fun. So, hiking trails, there's so many of them around, and just getting out of the building is exciting for them. They went to the art museum a week or two ago, and we took them to the public library last week, and they have a great time doing any of that.
Melanie Berg of the Scholze Center, thank you so much for coming in today and talking to us. And Mary Catherine, if you would, get another plug in for the big summer camps coming up, basketball and football for you guys, for CADAS and the Scholze Center.
The Brittany Jackson Tucker basketball camp is planned for Monday, June 17th. It's going to be at Baylor School. It's for boys and girls, grades 1st through 8th, from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. Brittany will be signing basketballs for everyone to take home. Everyone gets a camp t-shirt. Lunch will be provided by Mellow Mushroom, and we're so grateful for our sponsors, United Healthcare, Chattanooga Bakery, Coca-Cola Bottling, McDonald's. It's going to be a great day, and we hope to see you there. You can go to cadis.org to register. Be sure to use the special code, SPECIAL. It's the word special. Just spell it out, to be able to register for $40 instead of the $75 fee. And we hope to see you on Monday, June 17th, Baylor School, benefiting adolescent recovery at CADAS.
I'll ask one final question of you. Melanie just kind of pointed to it. Kids who had never really had a chance to be a kid. Just in your story, in mine, I was 12 years old when I realized that my dad was an alcoholic. And there wasn't an inkling. There wasn't a sliding scale. There wasn't, I've seen this coming. It was one great big fell swoop. One night, he was carried into the house by friends and crawled up the steps. And at 12 years old, I had to quit being a kid, and I had to become the man of the house. It had a profound effect on me, and it wasn't until much later, actually in my second stint of rehab, before I realized what kind of effect it had on me. What about your story?
You mentioned your dad. My parents were very conservative, great parents, Christians, and neither of them drank or definitely never did drugs. When I was growing up, I think my first inkling of drugs was from movies, Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Less Than Zero. And I think Fast Times at Ridgemont High was the first time I'd ever seen anybody smoke pot.
That's my head, man.
I definitely never saw anybody do it, live. Yeah. And it's just a whole different experience. I could not imagine growing up in today's world, in today's society. If we do that experimentation in our adolescent years, then we're more likely to become addicts.
Becomes the norm.
Right, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And whatever was working doesn't work anymore at some point.
That's right.
Their method to my madness, because there you go. I grew up in a very, very wonderful family, a very loving family. There was nothing wrong, but still I lost a huge chunk of my childhood due to substance abuse. You grew up in a better one, I would even say, to go so far as to say you didn't have any influences on you. I had to watch my dad. Once the scales fell from my eyes and I saw what was going on, you did not. Every family out there, you're eligible too. It hasn't happened to you yet. That's what it stands for. Yeah. You're eligible too. Keep your head on a swivel. Talk to your kids constantly, and don't be afraid to make a call to a pro.
Yeah, absolutely. I think not being scared to have these conversations is really important.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
I appreciate all you guys and all you folks out there listening. Thank you, and continue to listen and support our sponsors.
Scarred But Smarter is presented by CADAS, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, Chattanooga's only nonprofit addiction recovery center with a full continuum of care, offering the highest quality of treatment to those struggling with substance abuse disorder, regardless of their ability to pay. Go to cadis.org to learn more about our recovery and aftercare programs, or to make a donation, because every gift is much needed and greatly appreciated. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. Find us online at cadis.org.
Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, your destination for luxury home products that elevate every room in your house. Whether you're renovating your dream bathroom, designing a gourmet kitchen, or illuminating your living space with style, Ferguson has everything you need to turn your vision into reality. Transform your home into a sanctuary of sophistication with Ferguson Bath Kitchen and Lighting Gallery, where luxury meets inspiration. Ferguson proudly supports CADAS.
If you or someone you know is struggling with alcohol or drug abuse, reach out, seek support. Recovery is within reach. You are not alone, and CADAS will support you or your loved one every step of the way. Please call CADAS today for an assessment, 423-756-7644. Scarred But Smarter is presented by CADAS, Council for Alcohol and Drug Abuse Services, Chattanooga's only nonprofit addiction recovery center with a full continuum of care, offering the highest quality of treatment to those struggling with substance abuse disorder, regardless of their ability to pay. Go to CADAS.org to learn more about our recovery and aftercare programs or to make a donation, because every gift is much needed and greatly appreciated. Thank you for letting us be a part of your journey. Find us online at CADAS.org.